Minister, good morning. Thank you very much for your presence here. As we said at the beginning, this is the first important event in the framework of Athens Security Forum, which we intend to turn into a platform to debate security-related issues within a wider perspective, which is why we are delighted to have you here today, to combine the concept of security and to consider and study it at all levels. I believe it's a good opportunity after 3 years of many reforms having been implemented concerning the life, everyday life, but also the security and safety of citizens, to discuss with you how the combination of elements of power, for example, economic success, digital transformation, green development, the use of the recovery fund, the pandemic, also a security issue by excellence. So all these aspects of security, how can they go hand in hand with the traditional, the conventional needs for security that objectively our country needs? I mean, we are not a country that can focus only on digital transformation or climate change or financial growth. We just believe, and the organizing committee, that the International Relations Institute group believes that these elements of power are a springboard, a starting point for us to discuss issues of traditional security. And having said that, I would like to give you the floor to share with us what are these elements of security that the government has achieved, and then discuss together the big picture. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Afentouli. Thank you very much for having me here. I would like to congratulate the organizing committee for the initiative, and congratulations also for the national self-confidence concept that you have referred to, proportional, of course, to the size of a country. We know that Greece is neither a big country with a too powerful economy, nor a very small country. It is a medium-sized company in the European South, which over the last decade was confronted with an economic crisis, a financial crisis. Thanks to the European partners, we managed to save our country from economic default. So reforms were implemented in order to transform the state, but there was something missing, that is national ownership. To a big extent, unfortunately, in 2010, when the very serious financial recession exploded, Greece was unprepared to identify how this financial deficit actually emerged, what were the factors which took us there, and what were the solutions that we had to find. As a consequence, in the very first years, there was a debate about the depth of the reforms necessary, the necessary conflicts, the inevitable conflicts, because, of course, we all know that there are some who win and some who lose in case of reforms. Unfortunately, in our countries, reforms were interpreted as only negative reforms. Now, our view is that reform can benefit all, but of course, the necessary time to get prepared is necessary, as well as means which will duly allocate the benefits to all those who may seem initially or apparently that they relinquish some kind of rights. So what actually differentiates today's government, as against the previous ones, is the national ownership, the government ownership of the necessary reforms that are required in our country. We know very well what the standing is. We know that the starting point for Greece is very low. Greece is not close to the convergence with the remaining member states of the European Union. I'm thinking of the disposable income, social services, function of the state. We know very well what's the starting point, and we also know where we are heading, what the destination is, and we know that we have a very strong ambition, considering the size of Greece, for Greece to become a role model for Europe. And we can see that over the past 3 years, we have been up to the task. Of course, this is a gradual procedure. You cannot see differences and results in a fortnight. There are specific segments of the population, of society, of the economy, of the academia, which ask acceleration, more aggressive reforms. However, we need to acknowledge that reforms are there, are happening, are taking place, and thanks to those reforms, Greece now stands here. And I would like to show you some diagrams, because one picture is equals more than 1,000 words. You may see that Eurozone stands at 2.5%, Germany no growth, and growth rate for Greece stands at 5%. So over the past 3 years, this means that the appropriate economic and financial reforms have been implemented, which have been supporting those who suffer the most because of the crisis, while at the same time lay the foundations for an investment-friendly environment in order to have more public, private, national and foreign direct investment. And here I would like to show you another table from the Intelligence Unit of Economists. It was published some weeks ago, and according to this, Greece is the first country, ranks first in increasing the attractiveness of its environment. This is thanks to tax reforms, tax policies, entrepreneurial policies, digitization, that is the transactions with the state as companies and as individuals, also the energy transition related policies which favor what you said, that is the green transition, digital transition, the encouragement of more better quality private investment. Now all that, of course, certainly have to do with the fiscal level. And I would like to show this because it's important. Some argue that Greece indeed has a better standing as against the other members of the European Union because it has invested heavily in that. This is not true. We have a record high of direct private investment, foreign investment, and private and public investment, and all that has led a drastic reduction of public debt, which means that the relation between GDP and the reduction of debt is very important. The more dynamic the growth is, the better the relation between gross domestic product to the public debt. And this is very important indeed, because we have put in place a policy which is targeted when it comes to aid and assistance to the vulnerable, but at the same time moderate financially speaking, in order not to undermine the fiscal discipline, which is important. So this year, indeed, you will see that according to the results, we will have a better financial result, and in 2023 we will even reach a surplus despite the energy crisis and all the other crises, and this will help us achieve investment grade. And what this means for a country, investment grade means that Greece finally finds its way to the map of all the foreign investment funds which have not seen our country because of the absence of investment grade. We have managed to achieve attracting investors here in the absence of investment grades. Let's let's imagine what will happen as soon as we get the investment grade. But of course, this means that we need to be very cautious in fiscal management. By way of conclusion, in this first round of discussion, in our first part of our discussion, yes, of course, promotion of the country is inextricably linked to soft indicators that have to do, for example, with how a country, for example, achieves the climate change objectives or the energy transition, how it manages digital transition. All that, of course, mirrors what a country may do, and this is a message to be conveyed to foreign investment. And considering that Greece is very active, is speeding up, because of course it needs to catch up the remaining member states of the European Union, and I believe that eventually this is acknowledged, this is publicly accepted, and we are delighted after 3-4 years of this government having been in office to have managed tangible results here and abroad.
Minister, who can put in doubt figures? Figures are here. You presented them. It's a truth. Indeed, there have been impressive changes when it comes to figures, numbers, but also to the substance of our country's orientation. Perhaps this is a reason that neighboring countries sees us in a very hostile or offensive way, to be quite general in my terminology. But since we are all citizens of this country, and you know that we have the tradition of Sisyphus in this country that is one step forward, 2 steps backward, many backs and forths. Today, we have one unique chance after so many years, after 12 years, we would argue, of crisis, really to follow the way that you have highlighted. How do we build this resilience? How can we build this resilience in our investment pace, in reforms, and in an environment, either good or bad, of crisis? The environment is one of uncertainty, instability. We have much pressure due to the change of geopolitics. How can we build resilience with a direction, or having as a horizon 2030, we would say? I think that it takes a change of culture in Greece. This government is trying to serve that. Indeed, challenges are many. Challenges are big. Crisis and challenges coming from abroad are historic and unprecedented, which makes even more important the development that we're having in the indicators discussed before. In a very thorny environment, we have managed to stay intact and deliver even better compared to more powerful European countries and economies traditionally, which is not just the result of a trigger or of self-action. It is the result of a systematic work across many levels of politics. What I would like to stress is that in order to achieve this transition into a more stable environment where all these reforms will get roots and will be owned by the citizens, so no political party in power in a potential new government could deroot it, is for us to be able to manage at the same time, along with the short run and what is temporary, we must also manage the situation in the long run. We have a plan for 2030, which we are proving daily. Yesterday, we were in Patras, where we presented a very aspirational plan of growth, of hyper-regional growth of Patras, a gateway for our city towards the markets of Western Europe with a horizon 2030. We did the same for Thessaloniki. In 2030, we are doing the same for Greece and the whole region of Greece through the plan of RRF that we have built, which has been adopted with many merits by the EU, because there is a balanced mixture between public investment across all sectors and reforms. Let me here say that we want to be pioneers, look ahead and dedicate a significant part of our daily life when it comes to governance. And of course, we need to focus on planning, monitoring and implementation of investments in the long run. The same goes with politics. It is very easy to get trapped into a management that will be reactionary or just show some reflex internally in our agenda, because the opposition obviously wants to do its job. They need to verify their own positions. We would like to have an opposition that would be more fruitful with a vision for the future. However, this is not the case. Unfortunately, I would argue, we see a very hostile effort of deconstruction even of the national endeavors and the national achievements, which is a pity. However, we don't get trapped in this vicious circle. We will try to give replies where needed, when needed, at a political level, but at the same time, and let me repeat it, it takes this institutional persistence in building better, more resilient institutions. There is investment that should take place in public education, because thus we can see change of culture for our offspring. Younger children have a better view and better position in themselves vis-a-vis what is today the icon and the model of an active citizen, what means contribute to the common area. There is a more substantial culture with youngsters, which is very hopeful. We must enhance that through the readaptation of curricula across all levels. At the same time, we must build better institutions and better public goods, public assets in health, in social welfare. We see now incidence increase that touches all. We see phenomena in the society that are not tackled at the level of prevention, because we don't have the necessary infrastructure in our social welfare. Thus, we must create a better framework of a better, more effective award of justice. The rule of law, in my view, is the crown jewel of the operation of our republic, in a Western-type republic, and there must be no shadow to that. Greece is a country, is a republic that has a specific justice, which is open, which meets all different phenomena, all different adverse phenomena, and awards justice. There is no big delay, which is a big problem, because I know that there are many pending issues in the courts, and there is a denial toward justice, which we should cure. And I should argue that even for that, we have an aspiration plan, not communicated to the extent that we should have, because the reform of justice means investing in the HR, invest in the magistrates, in the bailiffs, in the different employees, in buildings, in IT systems, in evaluation of all the different personnel, and in the evaluation of the judges and the magistrates, so that we can be able to improve this critical pillar of democracy, which is justice. By way of conclusion, let me tell you that it takes persistence and respect to the institutions. Only through institutions and procedures may we skip the personalized tackling of issues, and we will not just depend on a good government or on a good PM that some place will come to the end of his mandate and then there will be a populist prime minister. There will be, on the contrary, a public administration that could retain all that and create a counterbalance so that we can be steadily on a good track. I'm happy because we touched upon the political landscape. As you see, we have here young people, we have students who are with us in the audience, and of course we have political reps coming from countries where consensus has taken quite long, like the reps of Germany or the Mr. Dzurinda coming from Slovakia. Consensus is and consent is what we need for this growth plan that you have just described. And I should say that Greece will be tested in the next time period, because we're going to have elections domestically, and there might be some partnership governments. How do you approach that? How do you see that? And in my view, there must be no contradiction here. In other words, we must find the necessary political consensus, and we must agree about main political targets. Because let me repeat it, this agenda that you have just described should be implemented in an era of uncertainty, at least regionally, and given a hostile stance coming from other countries in the region. So there is a dual bet here as a country. Any comment on that? Well, personally, I am an individual of consensus and consent, and I want to find the common place with others. But I believe that Greece, for the reason that we said before, doesn't have this culture yet. We saw some partnership governments in the previous years. These were governments of partnership in a country in need. We were on the verge of extinction. That is why these governments were created. But in Greece, we lack this government of partnership. This will come from youngsters, because young children and children should be taught how they can collaborate from the early ages. Partnership and collaboration are the cornerstones of a democracy. Right now, we have a lack of this type of culture. However, we must not leave that without any solution. That is why I'm saying that we need a powerful government with a plan, an autonomous government, having a plan for the future that will be ready to implement it and then get the proper mandate to continue with this implementation. In other words, we need deeply rooted changes in order to do so and feel it more tangible in the administration across all institutions. There must be a government with 8 years ahead that will finalize its circle, its political circle. It will complete a plan of reforms that will deliver, that will bring results, that will be owned by the citizens, and then nobody could challenge that. We've seen that many times in the past, that the political system embraced all changes. Why? Because changes were embraced by citizens. Right now, Greece is invited to take a leap. Always there is uncertainty. I do know. There is the uncertainty for the unknown. But I would like to invite all citizens to trust us. We know what we're doing. We work always based on the best possible practices. We do collaborate with the best possible advisors. Right now, we are exporting know-how towards the EU on different matters. We saw that in the era of the pandemic. We are seeing that now. Due to the energy crisis, Greece participates in the mechanism, the speaker, participates in the group of states that are discussing intensively about how we can mitigate the impact of the energy crisis, and I'm talking about the fuel prices. We have contributed through proposals. We have tabled proposals. The Greek mechanism has turned into a European mechanism when it comes to how we can recover the overprofits. This means that we work in a method which creates trust, not just domestically, but also amongst our European counterparts, and we have followed domestic practices that are tailored into European ones. Let us take questions from the audience, please. Some comments, please.
Καλημέρα, κύριε Υπουργέ.
Good morning, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much for your presence. My question is the following. Knowing the role you play to the coordination and the tracing the government policy, what do you think realistically for our country for 2030? Do you think we can become pioneers in various sectors? I believe that if we proceed in the we go ahead, today, Greece will be beyond the average of the European Union. Talking about energy transition, Greece has a better performance on a global scale. Greece produces 46 to 48% of the energy consumed from renewable sources of energy. This means that licenses have become given more easily, and on an annual basis, traditional sources of energy are being substituted by alternative ones. Greece has a top position, and this is a conquest. Talking about energy transition, we are ahead compared to the rest of Europe, and by 2030, 70% of the energy will be produced by renewable sources. As to digitalization, and I believe this can be clearly understood by all the citizens, there are some applications that make things easier for us and constitute a model for the rest of Europe. They help in improving the relation between the citizen and the state, in supplying better services to the citizens, and this contributes in having a restoration of the confidence of the citizens to the political parties, to democracy itself, to the capabilities of the public authorities to stand by the citizen, attributing value to the taxes and taking into account the need of the most vulnerable part of our society. Any other questions? Any other comments?
Εάν όχι, να σας ευχαριστήσω πάρα πολύ.
Thank you very much for your intervention. Hopefully you will participate in the next events as well of the Athens Security Forum. We're not talking about military security, which is a paramount factor for stability and continuation. Security nowadays has many aspects, and one of these aspects is economy, as well as climate change and digital transformation. They will enable us to tackle a lot of threats in front of us. Thank you very much.